I'm old. I'm old.
Yeah. Are we ready?
Yes.
And on the 29th.
Oh, and I was February 2nd.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February 8th meeting of the Conestoga Valley School Board. Notice that we are all in attendance. If you could please join me with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everyone that's here tonight in the room and all those watching online. Welcome to our meeting. Board, I need a motion to approve our agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any board comments tonight? All right, this will be our first time in our meeting for public comments. Any comments from the public? If there's anyone here in the room? All right. On to our action discussion here.
Any questions?
Okay, Wes, you're up. Talk to us a little bit about the change orders.
Yes. Hi everyone, good evening. I have two change orders this evening. They're both under the electrical scope and they're both credits. The first one is a result of a reduction in disconnects associated with the chiller equipment. That's a result of a scope duplicity between the mechanical and electrical scope. The other one is a small reduction in the lightning protection scope. In reviewing those shop drawings, that is what we call a delegated design, so not something that is detailed in our documents, but rather detailed by other professionals. They had detailed lightning protection for the pedestrian plaza that'll be to the right of the building entrance. That's an area, obviously, that pedestrians and the public will be at, and I didn't feel that would be good for that lightning protection to be at, and we can still meet code with it being removed. And obviously, those of you familiar with the future building, there will be higher portions of the building nearby, so the lightning protection can be removed from that area. So those two credits total $4,311.30. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Wes? All right, like we said, Wes, we like credits.
There we go. Thank you.
Will this go on consent?
Consent?
Consent. All right, Dr. Daniker, you are up. Talk to us about the
About the dinosaur, yes.
Dino.
Mrs. Hunsaker wanted me to come to you to talk a little bit about the change in the agreement, but with some new board members, wanted to make sure we all know that a little bit of the story of the dinosaur. Several years ago, a recent graduate who I taught as a science student had the ability to bring on board a Triceratops donation to Conestoga Valley. And it sounds like an interesting kind of a donation when you consider also it's one of the top 10 Triceratops find in the United States. The professor said it was one of the best ones he's ever seen as far as preserved. So it's an amazing specimen. We were able to travel. We wrote a grant through CVEF. We traveled to North Georgia University where it was restored. It was found out in Wyoming, but restored in North Georgia and transported it back. So an entire 30 hours in a school van, pulling a Triceratops behind you is a memory I won't soon forget. So it was quite enjoyable. Oh, I could say that, I guess. So we brought it back to CV, and Ken and his guys were able to warehouse it, and we were just talking about the installation at the new middle school. It'll be in the lobby, and it'll be a great benefit to us. We're also going to be utilizing our project design here at the high school, television studio, and TV production classes to create an interactive display that can be educational for the students. So it's a learning experience for the students here at the high school, and hopefully a great inspiration for the students at the middle school to be with the Triceratops. Again, the purpose for the presentation tonight is that we need to switch. Originally, the donor was going to have at least for $1, but he has asked that he would rather make it a donation. And according to board donation policy 702, it has to be brought before the board to change that from the lease understanding to a donation understanding. So the student, I can tell you later, but he's not ready to be known yet. He wants to have a big reveal event when we get a chance to name the dinosaur and things like that. But I can always let you know who that is, but he'd rather not be known right now to the public. Questions?
You wanna put it on consent, or do you wanna
It'll
put
be
it
on
now? Consent, good.
All good? All right, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. You're up.
All right, I have the next couple of items. So the first item on your agenda that's mine is our, a renewal of our supply agreement with Constellation Energy. Those of you who've been on the board know this. We use Constellation for both our natural gas and our electricity. So obviously they come through either PP&L or UGI, but we have to buy the commodity somehow. This agreement is exactly the same agreement that we had with them the last time we bought, which was 2019. With the new solicitor, I did have Mr. Frank Hauser look at it. His only question was related to if there were any dispute, would it be handled in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania courts? We got verification from the attorney at Constellation that would be the case, and so it's really just a matter of approving this agreement. Actually, the agreement's the same, approving the purchase. We will also, Ken and I were on a conference call with our contact person at Constellation about the natural gas prices as well. So I anticipate over the next couple of months coming back to you with that. This electricity were bought the whole way out through to June 30th, so we don't need anything until July 1. But the price is good right now, so we want to make sure we get it locked in now that it makes sense. So we are asking for approval for that tonight because we did verify the price again today and it hasn't moved, and so we want to get it locked in as soon as possible.
Any questions? All right, with that, board, I'll take a motion.
So moved. Second.
Roll call starting with Dana.
Aye.
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 And aye. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, next item I have is budget update. Dr. Z, if we can just do the PowerPoint, please. Should be the very first.
Athletics,
Oh, you want to let Dina go first?
If you don't mind.
Sorry.
she's gotta cover a basketball game.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, Dina.
Last time I had a basketball game, I had to stop it at halftime, so I need to make sure I'm back there in case that
Got it.
happens.
All right, I can wait. It's not a problem.
So, all right, you tall people. Okay, so well, first I'd like to introduce you to my intern this semester. This is David Hyman, and he's a senior at Lancaster Biblical College, and he is seeking a degree in sport management, and with the end result being an athletic director. So he chose to shadow me. I hope that was the right decision. So we'll see. So far, so good. So thank you very much for having me here this evening, and just wanted to talk with you a little bit about athletics. So as you can see here, some of the topics that we will go over here are sports offered and participation rate, athletics and review of last year, our fall sports success this year, some changes due to COVID, challenges and gratitude, and then of course the athletic budget. I know that you can all read this, but these are such important points that I would like to read them for you again because I'm very passionate about this. So, and this is athletics across the board, not just CV athletics, although I like to think CV athletics are a little more special than athletics everywhere else. But athletics are an integral part of your overall education, contributing to physical, social, emotional, and moral development. I have dedicated my entire life to trying to build character through athletics, and I see this on a daily basis. It leads to increased educational outcomes, higher grades, higher test results, higher expectations beyond high school, and decreased discipline issues as well. There's another caring adult for every student, and the relationship between the player and the coach is quite a special one. It challenges students to learn and grow in ways that will benefit them for the rest of their lives, promotes essential life skills, strategies, and healthy behaviors, nurtures friendships, memories of significant moments, sense of pride, sense of belonging. In fact, if a couple of you were in attendance at our commitment day last week, and one of the questions that I asked on the questionnaire to be able to write the bios for all of the student athletes, I asked what is You know, what is your most memorable moment in high school, or, you know, what's had the biggest impact on you? And every one of them wrote something about what athletics has taught them. And I thought that was pretty special. And then, of course, there are competitive opportunities for different interests and skill levels in our department. So these next few slides, I don't need to go into real detail here. I just wanted you to be aware of the team levels that we offer in every season of the sport for both girls and boys. And then here at the end on this one, this is probably the most interesting part of this, is for the girls' sports, we have a total of 14 sports that we offer with 37 teams, and that those teams span from high school varsity JV and junior high varsity, junior high JV, and a 7th grade team. We have 15 varsity teams. We have 9 JV teams, 8 junior high, 4 junior high JV, and 1 7th, and we have 29 teams that are PIAA status. And then we have all of our boys' sports here in each of the seasons. And then and on the boys' side, 14 sports with 31 teams, 14 varsity teams, 7 JV, 6 junior high, 3 junior high JV, 1 7th grade, with 31 teams PIAA status. So that's a lot of teams to be scheduled, a lot of teams to ride buses. a lot of stuff going on there on a daily basis. Participation rates. This is always a very interesting thing, and I love to figure this out every year. For our high school, 39% participation rate. You can see how many males and females are participating. Same thing with the middle school, almost the same as the high school, 36%. We figured out our 2-sport and our 3-sport athletes this year. I was actually surprised. I thought we did have more 3-sport athletes, so I was surprised to see that. But it's interesting to see you know, those numbers in the 2 and 3-sport athletes. So athletics in review from last year, 2 seasons only, no spring sports season due to COVID, unfortunately. So a lot of these statistics, they're covering just, you know, all the statistics are just covering the two seasons, 20 academic all-stars. We had some team academic awards for 2 sports, team sportsmanship awards, 3 individual state qualifiers for girls tennis and girls swimming, 4 all-state athletes, district team runner-up, 7 team district qualifiers, 1 district champ, and 16 individual district qualifiers for some of our individual sports, I guess you could say. And then leagues, so we had a league section champ in field hockey. We had 8 team league qualifiers, 5 individual league champs, all from girls tennis, 27 individual league qualifiers or medal winners. We had 39 LL League All-Stars. We had our 3 senior athletes of the year, Delgado, McBride, and Stoltzfus. We had 12 students going on to play intercollegiate athletics, and we had 3 coaches named Coach of the Year. And this is only the start of my 3rd year, middle of my 3rd year. And my 2nd year, we had 3 Coach of the Year coaches recognition, which was great. Our team GPAs, we are staying well above a 3.0, as we have for many years, so it's really great to see that. Our highest GPA, 3.839 for girls cross country. Some fall team success 2020 that we can go over now. Field hockey, they had a 9-5 record, All-State Academic Team Award, and with 2 All-State players, and they made the district playoffs. The girls tennis team lost their first 2 matches and then won 6 straight. 2 league qualifiers. Dale Gregg, this is pretty exciting. Dale's been coaching for a very long time, and he was named the 2019-20 NFHS-PA Boys Tennis Coach of the Year, and then went on to be named the Mid-East Section Coach of the Year as well. Girls soccer, we had 4 section all-stars. We got a team academic award and an ethics award. And in golf, they celebrated their first wins in a season since 2017 with a winning record this year, and we had an LL qualifier. So they were definitely the most improved team of the fall season. Football, 6-3 record, improved from 2-8. Jared Novak, Coach of the Year. Boys soccer, qualified for districts for the 6th straight year and 20th year overall. It's really amazing. The assistant coach, Todd Sheets, was the PSCA, which is the Pennsylvania State Coaches Association, and USC Regional Assistant Coach of the Year. Girls volleyball also had a winning record, and we had 7 student athletes recognized at the CV Athletics Commitment Day ceremony on February 3rd, and their collective GPA was a 3.88. Now, without the dates there, could you tell which one was last year and which one was this year? So last year, we had 10 student athletes, this year we had 7, and those are the pictures. So some changes that we had to go through due to COVID-19, I think live streaming was one of the biggest. I mean, other than the fact that we're not supposed to be touching people, live streaming was one of the biggest. The equipment and a 1-year subscription to Huddle was granted by the Buckskin Activities Alliance. Huddle is a company that we've been working with to be filming our games, breaking down our games, and we have 2 cameras, one in each of our gyms in the high school, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I can set it right from my phone. In fact, I could stop the live streaming right now on the JV game, get the varsity game going, and it is wonderful. It's all calculated by a computer, and you don't need an actual human to be filming, and it looks great, and it looks professionally done. I've been watching live streams of my children from other schools, and we put it right up on our TV in the middle of our living room. It's pretty neat. So this summer, just like we had to write a return to school plan, I also had to write a return to play plan, which you read and approved. We also have a return to play medical protocol. So if you're familiar with athletics and for instance, if a student has a concussion, and once they stop having symptoms, they have to go through a return to play protocol to make sure that those symptoms don't come back. You have to do the same thing now with COVID, mainly because of heart screening. We've had to have our seasons, a reduced number of competitions and condensed seasons. So far, our fall and our winter seasons have started a little bit later than they normally do, and we've played some, few fewer games in the seasons, which has been fine. We've had to limit our spectators so that we are limiting contact with people. We are mainly now using our event staff to enforce those COVID safety guidelines versus taking ticket money because we have to make sure that we don't go over the capacity that we have right now because we've had to really narrow down our capacity. Constant changes in schedules, almost on a daily basis. And our coaches are constantly updating the parents. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I know sometimes it gets frustrating for the parents to be like, oh my gosh, there's another change, but the parents have been really good and really understanding about it, and we appreciate it very much. And then obviously it has really affected our fundraising. It's affected the fundraising for the Buckskins Activities Alliance. It's affected the fundraising for each team's booster clubs. A lot of the booster club meetings and different things usually take place right on campus in classrooms, and everything's been taking place by Zoom, as I'm sure they are with you and all of your meetings. Whether it's with CV or outside of CV, we haven't been able to open concession stands. So that's been a really big change financially for the teams. Some challenges that we continue to face are facility maintenance. Facilities require constant care and updating, whether it's, fences that break down or dugouts or bleachers or scoreboards. The facility maintenance remains a challenge because it just requires constant care and updating. The facility rental process is a continuous effort with Adele. We love it. We love talking on the phone about the facility rental process, but we are continually trying to make that better and more efficient and more attractive to our customers. Staffing, you probably heard me last year and the year before, those of you that were here mainly talking about our junior high JV coaches and how we need to try to increase that, and then of course increasing our competitiveness. Lots of thank yous. BAA, our volunteer coaches, our administration and school board, our faculty managers and event staff, our booster clubs, our cheerleaders, our community and fans. Janet, my assistant, can't live without her. Custodial staff, groundskeeping, athletic trainers, our coaches, our transportation office staff, and my principal, Mike Smith. And the athletic budget comparison. So there are some areas where you'll see a small increase, some you'll see a decrease, and some you see a significant increase. If you would like me to get started on the two significant increases, I can go ahead and get started there. So the first one is the contracted and professional services. So that increased by $10,285, $6,000 of which is the Huddle subscription for live streaming. That's a one-year subscription. It's renewable every year, and that is $6,000. So that right there is more than half of that $10,000 plus. We also would like to get what's called Arbiter Athlete. That's a cost of $2,500. We use Arbiter as our scheduling software. Arbiter Athlete adds to that. It helps us manage. We have 700 plus athletes that we have to manage every year, and that helps us manage them in a lot of different ways. Whether it's rosters, we can do their participation payments online. We can do all of their athletic training, paperwork that they have to do for their physicals. We can do all of that online. So this would be a huge time and money saver in the long run, and much more organized in terms of managing those 700 athletes. And then LEMSA, which is the emergency services that we have at our football games. So we have 6 home football games, 1 scrimmage and 5 regular season games. And if we have 2 EMTs there, it would cost $660 per game for a total of $39.60 for the season. That way, if there is an injury during that game and 1 EMT has to go, we still have another EMT there to be able to continue that game, because we have to have somebody there during those games for the sake of these, what could be serious injuries. So when you're looking at the Huddle subscription for $6,000, the Arbiter Athlete $2,500, and LEMSA at $39.60, which is actually an increase of $10.60 from last year, you're almost at that $10,000. And then the other $725 is just the 3 to 5% increases in some of the other professional services that we have. Garber for calibration of wrestling scales, Clark for ice machine maintenance, biomedical services for STEM machine ultrasound for our athletic training services, and then an increase in our arbiter pay fee, which is how we pay our officials. Any questions on that section there? And then for our supplies, you're gonna see another $10,000 increase. That's $10,793. So we are getting these 2 new turf fields, which we're incredibly grateful and excited for. And in order to play on the fields, we have to have equipment on the field. So I'm looking to purchase 2 sets of field hockey cages for those 2 fields, which are going to equal $6,385, which again is more than half of that $10,700 increase. We're looking to get some corner flags for the turf fields for soccer, which is $918. And then one thing that's significant, last April when we were asked to look at our budgets and decrease what we could once we were hit with COVID, one of the things that I did was I looked at all of my spring sports that were not going to have a season, and I talked with all the coaches and said, okay, what can we transfer from this year to next year? And that's what we did. So I was able to really decrease. I decreased, what do I have here? $3,954, so almost $4,000 from our spring supplies that we didn't need. And they were already purchased, but what that meant was we're just gonna use them for this year. Therefore, I did not budget that $4,000 for this year. So that's where more of that money is coming from, because now we have to buy balls and we have to buy those things for the spring. So that's where all that's coming from. And then you see some charts, some pie charts there for you. Little visual. Jane was on there last year, but I mean, she's a state champ. We keep her up there a couple of years. So, any questions?
Have we switched, when we look at participation rates, are we now looking at individual students, not slots that one student might fill 2 or 3 of?
Right, yes, I was able to make that change from last year. That's why I also added the 2 and 3 sport athletes.
Okay, yet our participation rates are still very high, which I think
Right.
is also good. I had a question about the facility rental process.
Mhm.
Considering the extra care and cleaning and so forth, are we still using the same pricing, or when we talk about plus janitorial services, does that end up being built in there? And do we really have many people still asking to use facilities?
Do you mean for this year?
Yeah,
So we haven't had, for indoor facilities, we haven't had anybody using them. A
no
lot
one
of,
asking or no one permitted?
they're asking and we're not permitting.
Okay,
The outdoor facilities we have allowed because
okay.
it's safer outside.
Okay, so that pretty much follows the same thing. And your budget, this becomes difficult. Some years ago, Adele was kind enough to work with me to get that big spreadsheet, which really makes it easy.
Mhm.
But I did notice that the amount, trying to figure out the athletic budget is really challenging.
Mhm.
From this side of the table too. And we've always had that standard sheet, so we could see, and there's a huge difference between what you see as your athletic budget and what we have to add from the general budget. And that's the number that has been growing astronomically. In 7 years, it's gone up like 40%. And I know some years we were able to keep it trimmed down, most because PIAA pulled back some rules and a lot of the non-league games and the travel related to it. But there was one thing I did catch, is this year in your report, there's no listing for, the insurance part of it seems to change a lot. I know it's the same, I'm sorry.
The insurance actually went down.
Yeah, the insurance went down. Is that our share of student insurance, or is that cover a larger thing than the individual?
It's the student insurance, correct? Yeah.
Okay, but on the list that you gave us here, insurance isn't listed.
I don't think that was, what are you?
It's on the
looking for?
spreadsheet, but.
So it's on there. I don't think I gave that to you.
Oh, yeah, it is, I'm sorry.
That's
I'm sorry.
okay.
It's in a different order, I'm just having
That's
to
okay.
check everything off.
But it is, so it went down from 21.5 to 14,000, the insurance did, and that was all you. I put it in there acting like it's me, but it's really her.
Yeah. I had to move around to try to find that a couple places. The extra cost of cleaning and sanitizing and all, did that come out of your budget, or was that part of the larger district? Because I know a lot of that money came from
That's
grants.
coming out of the district.
That was district-wide, okay. I do have a concern, I know this goes up and down a lot, but both the athletic budget, I understand if it went up because we used to be down around 20% participation. I think 37 is an excellent figure. But I am still concerned with the growth in costs, both in the athletic department's budget and the amount that it takes from our general fund, because we're not going to be seeing large increases in revenues that we would have liked.
I'm sorry, we're not gonna be.
We're not going to be seeing the large increases in revenues,
Mhm.
and to continue to go to where we're up to this year, 925,000 out of our general budget, up from 873. And, just 4 or 5 years ago, it was 300,000 or 400,000 less. So it's growing really fast. I don't know where we make that work, but we do have to
Right.
work to trim that back, I think.
Right. Mhm.
Thank you.
And I did, just like the buildings and the departments, Dina also comes to us and argues her budget, because we have a critical eye on this. This is her preliminary budget right now.
Right.
Yeah, I think of some of the individual budgets we've seen, and a lot of these costs, I know we can't control. PIAA controls, the cost of refs controls, the requirements are controlled, and you don't have a lot of elbow room, but I think we need to find at least a little bit, because this is one of our fastest growing pieces out of the general budget for individuals.
I will say, Dina, thank you for the electronic stuff, because I said this, I don't know if any of you have, my kids that play in college. The technology that we use to stream our games is better than most colleges that I've watched my son play volleyball at. So, that's great.
Yeah, good. I'm really glad that you enjoy that. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do it this year. It was, I will say though, it was not easy.
I'm sure.
It was a really, really cumbersome process and at times frustrating. I think Adele caught me on one day where I was like, "It's live streaming!" And she checked on me on Monday and said, "How are you?" But it's up and running, so. But thank you, I appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Dina.
Thanks, Dina.
So thank you, everybody. Good
Thank
evening.
you.
I'm sorry I have to run. I gotta run upstairs and check out that game, so.
All right, let's try this again. Let's go back to Dina's budget just for a minute. Maybe I can answer Mrs. Groff's question about the insurance. So, well, I don't wanna do it while she's trying to.
Go ahead.
I didn't wanna be answering your question while you were trying to do something.
No,
so the-
I'm sorry, I can't get hooked up to the internet. Sometimes you keep
Josh,
asking, we
you
can
can't
make
get
it
hooked
work.
up to the internet.
I don't really need it for this evening, that's okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to answer that question you had brought up about the insurance. So if
I get lost with where all that comes from and what budget that goes into.
Sure, sure. I think you know that we are members of the Lancaster Lebanon School Insurance Consortia.
Yeah.
That we do property and casualty, workers' comp, kind of as a conglomerate with other districts in the IU. And actually, they've reached out past our IU to other districts statewide at this point. They came to us with a proposal last year for student accident insurance that would cover not only the athletes, but then give us the ability to offer the insurance for other extracurriculars, and then also what they call the 24/7 coverage, which parents can buy into, and sort of as a package. And the package that they offered actually was cheaper than what we were paying. I mean, we were essentially gonna take what we would have already offset to the athletic budget, and we were able to basically provide all of the coverage. So we were able to do that for a cheaper price than we would have in the past.
Oh,
So that's why you see the big, we actually completely changed vendors and who we're doing it through. So it's a completely different model. The coverages are still the same, but the place that we do it through has changed in the paperwork and everything has changed.
And the student contribution,
I'm sorry?
and the student contribution,
So the students can buy the 24/7 coverage, but the extracurricular and athletic coverage we pay for through the district, and that's what the line item you saw in Dina's budget.
okay, well, didn't the activity fee used to go towards insurance too?
Yeah, Adele, tell me how much?
$20 goes to athletic.
I'm sorry.
$20 of the activity fee goes.
And that's what we're using in part, so
Yes.
technically the students are still paying that individual insurance,
Yeah, they're
indirectly.
correct. They're not paying it individually, but part of their activity fee goes
It goes
towards
into
that, yes.
Okay, it keeps showing up someplace else, I just wondered where it was, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so preliminary budget, just want to give you briefly some updates from what we talked about in January. The first couple of slides of this are just the timeline, kind of recapitulating what the index is. And then the next couple of slides just show you where we left off when we were here in January. So revenues, expenses, and then all the totals. So we go to the next slide. Go ahead. Some years we don't make any changes between the draft preliminary and then the final preliminary that you will approve next week. In this particular case, with the turnover, so real estate taxes were due at the end of the calendar year. We did that turnover, you approved that at the January meeting. When Adele and I went back and looked to see what our collection rate was gonna look like, if you remember, when we were at this point, well, actually not this point, when COVID hit last year, we had adjusted that collection rate down because we really thought that we were going to see a much higher turnover this year than we did. And so in all full disclosure, when the rate wasn't down as much as we thought, to try to be as realistic as possible, we felt like we needed to adjust that collection rate up and add that additional revenue back in. So now we're using a collection rate that is similar to what we've used historically. Obviously, it had a $700,000 increase in the revenue line item, so it makes the deficit look less. Just trying to be completely transparent kind of with how we're doing it. We did also make that change on the PDE 2028 form, so all of that should match. Second piece that we talked about but we did not include yet is the ESSER 2 funds. And we do have the allocation that PDE has released. The total allocation will be about $4.4 million. But as Dr. Z had mentioned about, kind of Dina coming and presenting her budget, we go through this process internally in February and March where we have, the department heads and the principals come and present the budgets. And one of the things that we're gonna be looking at is what are the needs that the current COVID needs that we have that will continue going forward that we're gonna need to offset? And then what are things like, are there remediations and tutoring and things that may need to be added? And so I couldn't, in full disclosure, just add the revenue side without adding the expense side, and we haven't had those discussions to know what the expense side is gonna be at this point. So felt that it was best to just make sure we disclose it so you know what it is, but not actually put it in until we know what the other side of it looks like. We don't wanna inflate the number and we don't wanna make the number look less. We wanna try to be as realistic as possible. In talking with other districts and kind of, folks who know what's going on statewide, most people are seeing, and we'll talk about this a little bit next week, from an economic standpoint, that the effects, whether they be supply effects or remediation effects, that there are going to be things that are going to occur, not just in the 21-22 budget, but we're gonna see those effects into 22-23. So our plan, at least at this point, is that all $4.4 million may not go in for the 21-22. Kind of thinking around, 50% at this point, but again, that's a guess until we have those discussions and kind of see how much is gonna go in for 21-22, and then make sure that we reserve some for the needs that are gonna be there in 22-23 as well. And then, of course, there could be other stimulus packages and other pots of money that come through between now and June as well. The next slide then, what I tried to do, because we did make that change, is kind of show you what the change looks like. When I showed this to you in January, I didn't include the exception because it's a pretty small dollar amount, and honestly, we're sort of not expecting that we are going to apply for it, but not expecting that we're going to use it at this point, and we're gonna try not to. But in order to make the official preliminary budget on this slide show up with that PDE 2028 form, wanted to show you what the revenue looks like if you take the index, which is the 1.4 million, and that number changed a little bit with the change in collection rate, because they're obviously tied together. The 220,000 of the exception, and then that 700,000 local revenue number that I mentioned on the previous slide, add all those together, and that's the difference between the top two lines on this slide. The revenue's at 71,200,000, and then the revenue's at 73,600,000. And then the next slide, again, I just kind of pulled this out, so I tried to highlight the numbers that changed. So if you're kind of looking at it, would draw your eye to it, but that's just, I didn't show you the expense one because again, it didn't change, it was only on the revenue side. And then certainly you know what this slide is about because we've done that one before. On the Act 1 index history, I did have Katie update this, just so you have the 2021 and 21-22 line items there, you can kind of see where we're gonna be. And then the last slide that I included was, I took all the districts in Lancaster County and just kind of wanted to show the base index versus an adjusted index. So I've said to you a number of times that we are one of the few districts that do not get an adjusted index. So our base index and our adjusted index are both 3%. And that's, a calculation that the state does based upon your perceived wealth. So if they perceive you as wealthy, you don't get an adjusted index. If they perceive you as less wealthy, you actually do get an adjusted index. So really just to point out, and I tried to highlight the districts that are like us and that are the same. And then if you remember the slide that I showed you, if we did, we will apply, but if we did take that $220,000 of an exception and went to the 3.46%, our index plus exception is less than any of those adjusted indexes the other districts are looking at. So it's a little easier for them to say, oh, I'm not gonna go above the index because their index is 3.6 or 3.8 or 4.3, where ours is 3%. So sometimes you just have to be a little bit careful with the semantics, kind of the way people position stuff to make sure that they understand this sort of piece, so. And that's it. So unless you have any questions, everything's been laid public. We will come back to you next Tuesday for the resolution for approval of the preliminary budget. And then actually by the time we get to that, our first internal budget meeting will have already happened. And then we'll be working over the next couple of months to try to bring the numbers down as much as possible to come back to you in May.
I appreciate you bringing these numbers down. I always try to remember that when somebody gets your tax bill, they don't say, well, that's good, it's below the index. They just look at the raw number. We care about the index, they don't.
Yep. Okay, next item is mine as well, policy review. So we have 3 policies, but fortunately 2 of them are pretty easy. So I'm gonna do the most difficult one first, which is 805. And I know that Dr. Z had put in his update that we essentially probably should have started over with this policy. The core of it was still there, but the detail of it really needed to be updated. So a couple of things have happened. I think the last time we looked at this policy was 2014, and really didn't make very many changes to it then. But since then, Act 44 went into effect, which is the act that requires for the superintendent to appoint the safety and security coordinator, and then has all of the training pieces in it. And then obviously the AG's office Safe to Say program has come out since then. So there's actually been a lot of activity in this area, in this emergency planning and preparedness area in the last 5 or 6 years, I guess. So if you have any questions, I'll sort of answer them, but really, again, the changes are making sure that the list of trainings that our staff are required to do, which Dr. Z's on right now, if you just scroll down, Dr. Z, just a little bit, it tells you there employees are required to complete a minimum of 3 hours of training every 5 years. And Dr. Cartwright and Dr. Mann do a lot of work with the trauma-informed training and suicide prevention and a bunch of other things that we do in that realm. The other piece that's in here, again, that's new is, we've obviously just lived through this, the continuity of education. So talking about, I'm sort of going backwards here, but the continuity of education plan that obviously we did through COVID, and the language is actually here to deal with that. And then again, the other piece, I think it's at the end, is the certainly the security drills, but then the Safe to Say program and codifies that as well. So it is a pretty significant overhaul, but I think we've now caught everything. I did look at a couple other policies in addition to the PSBA template, and we actually ran this policy by John Baker at the IU. So hopefully we've dotted all of our I's and crossed our T's on that one. So I'm gonna stop on that one just for a minute, make sure there aren't any questions, because it'll probably be hard to back up. No, looks good. Okay, next 2 will be much easier. So Along with 805 and emergency preparedness is 805.1, which is essentially the policy that tells us that we need to do an MOU with our local agencies. And there are just some very minor changes to that, mostly around the training piece of it. So that's all there. And then the third policy, which we've hit a couple of times over the last several years, is 806, which is our abuse policy. So we just did this one, I think, 2 years ago. We had to make some changes to it due to some of the sex trafficking language that was approved in Harrisburg. But the biggest change to this one is, yep, you went right by, there we go. Remember when we did the employee background clearances, the federal ones originally had to be every year. And then the Department of Health and state police were every 3 years. Those then got changed to every 5 years. And so this policy, we've changed to 60 months so that it matches, so it's the 5 years as well. And that's the only change to that one. Any questions on those two? Okay, and I think I am turning it over to Joshua next.
Yep. Thanks, Phil.
You're welcome.
Good evening, board.
Good evening,
I'm gonna talk to somebody about that. Good evening, board. So before you have 3 purchase agreements for equipment for the new middle school building. The different categories are because they were submitted under USAC E-rate funding. For those of you on the board who may not know what that is, that's a federal program that provides 2 different categories of subsidy to the districts for network and interconnectivity. Category 1 being our internet connection, which we get through the IU, and category 2, which qualifies us for internal connection, which is equipment, switches, wireless access points, and UPS equipment as well. So for the new middle school, I'm proposing 26 internal cores or building switches, 1 core. That's based on the layout of the design and the number of things we're going to need to connect access points, which is also the second quote that you see. It's 140 access points, 5 external to cover the building, and then 5 UPSs. Total value you'll see is $384,443. The district's current rate of discount based on the lunch program is 50%. So for all the equipment, we'd be looking at out of the project 192,221. It's a lot of information. Any questions? So thankfully, the new cycle of 5 years has allowed us the opportunity to utilize more funds for a particular purpose, where before it was allocated per each building enrollment, but they've been listening to the districts. And so for the next 5 years, we actually can allocate wherever we need to, independent of that, based on the total amount of money for the district. So that's actually going to be helpful for us as we're looking at doing a lot of these projects moving forward. So kind of fell in perfect timing with the building. So. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, good evening. Present the calendar for next year. Couple points to highlight for you is that the committee met twice, and based on the committee's recommendation, we want to continue next year with the staggered start. We really didn't get to experience it this year because of COVID, so we really like to try that and make sure that give it a good, fair opportunity to play out. Also, we want to continue with the early dismissals on Fridays, connected to Fridays rather than on Wednesdays, and or long weekends wherever possible. And I believe we were able to get that taken care of throughout the calendar. A couple points that are different than previous calendars. If you look at look at August 27th. We have an early dismissal there. Part of the conversation around the committee was that that first week is a full 5-day week, and thinking that perhaps if we put an early dismissal there, it kind of lightens it a little bit for the elementary students as far as a way to ease into the year. So in an effort not to lose time, instructional time, what we did was we took the other early dismissals, so the early dismissal from October and September, and moved them. So you'll see that in September, there's no early dismissal. that actually moved into August. That's all I'm saying, just to try and, again, not to lose more instructional time, but to make that a shift. That was recommended through the teachers and the parents, who are on board with that. The other things, looking at, move the day off, so instead of looking at the spring break in March, instead of having off Thursday, I'm sorry, April.
April, yeah.
Lost my place. Moving that Thursday, the 14th, to March, having a day off in March. We go from February to April without a day off, and we discussed that, thinking, well, if we take that Thursday, move that into March, and then we would have Good Friday and Easter Monday with the Easter spring break holiday there. And that seemed to be approved or accepted by everyone. Any negative feedback there. The other piece to point out is, as far as the makeup days, just starting at the beginning and just working our way through. You know, in the event, like this past year, we had COVID. And by putting, for example, if you look at like September 3rd on as a makeup day, in the event something happened and we needed to use that day early on, that we could use it, that it's in the calendar as a makeup day. Same thing with September 20th. Just work our way through until we get to the end of the year.
Questions? I think that September half day is important. I know we can't separate primary from intermediate, and Labor Day doesn't always cooperate with us, but that first week of school for K, 2, and 1, a lot of those kids can't make it through a whole day for a whole week. And we used to be able to set it up that we would have like 3 days and then 4 days, and they could acclimate, but that can be very difficult for those first important days. I think that's something to keep an eye on every year, especially for those primary kids. I mean, we have kids falling asleep in first grade that just aren't used to that first day. It can be tough on them.
It's a long week. Anyone else? Great, thank you.
Thanks, Don. All right, board, you have in front of you the tentative agenda for next week. Notice a reminder that it is on Tuesday, not Monday. It's our second time in our meeting now for public comments. There's no one here. So any board matters tonight, board initiatives?
I would like to make the same one I make every year, reminding both board members and the public that there are, I know it sounds like a dirty word right now, but there are elections coming up, as if we haven't been through enough of it. Just to let everyone know that it's a confusing year, but we do have 6 full and partial terms up. And as always, I will offer the courtesy of picking up petitions, if that can be a problem.
All right. Hearing nothing else, board, I will take a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?